Hello everyone, how are you this fine afternoon? It is lovely to be here once more, sharing some strata tips and strategies and information that I think might be helpful for you. Now, the topic I've chosen this afternoon relates to access to information on an owner's corporation's books and records. And I am proposing this topic because it relates to what I was doing this morning, which is attending the office of a strata manager and inspecting the books and records for a client of mine. Now, that is something that I do reasonably often, and it's something that I usually suggest when I first start doing some legal work for a lot owner who might have a particular outcome that they want to achieve. I suggest that I go in and have a look at the owner's corporation's books and records, and I might be looking for something in particular, or I might just be checking to see that everything is being kept up to date, that the legislation is being complied with, and if it's not, what are the steps that we can take to deal with it. Now, as part of this process, it is very common that I find that the books and records are not, sadly, being kept in accordance with the legislation. There are things missing, and a really common thing to happen is that when I ask to look at a copy of the strata roll, which is the list of all owners and their contact details, I'm either told by the strata manager that that roll cannot be made available to me because it is private and contains private information, or that I'm going to get an amended copy of the roll which doesn't contain email addresses, because I'm told that the strata manager cannot disclose email addresses to me. Now, some of you watching this will be thinking, yes, this has happened to me before. It comes up a lot. I get messages in my inbox from people who've listened to the podcast asking about this. I get questions in our members only forum asking about this. Are owners corporations, are strata managers allowed to withhold this kind of information? And the answer under New South Wales law is no. They are required to provide you with a copy of the strata roll if you have booked an inspection of the records pursuant to our section 182 in our Strata Schemes Management Act in New South Wales. If you have followed that process, booked an inspection, you've paid the fee to inspect, you are entitled to see the strata roll. It's one of those things that's on the list that you should be seeing. Now, you need to see a full copy of the strata roll, and we look at section 178 of the Strata Schemes Management Act, which tells us what must be set out in a strata roll, and that includes email addresses if a lot owner has provided an email address. Okay, and what you will find, and I would say, look, probably about 90% of circumstances these days, lot owners are providing their strata managers with email addresses. Now, whether or not they want that to be their address for service, they might have an agent because they're an investor owner, or they might still want to receive everything via mail. Whether or not they've provided that email address as an address for service, if they've provided one, it goes on the strata roll. And that is what section 178 says. And if it goes on the strata roll and you are entitled to inspect the strata roll, then yes, you can be seeing email addresses of other owners. And guess what? We have a tribunal case in New South Wales that tells us that the strata roll, including owner details, personal details like email addresses, must be provided to owners who request it. And that case is the Legge case. I'm never sure if it's Legge or Legge. It's Legge. It's a 2013 tribunal case here in New South Wales. And I wheel it out every now and then when I have to write a letter to a strata manager to explain that this kind of information must be made available to owners who request it. The tribunal said, yes, that is what our legislation provides. There are no privacy principles. This is often an excuse I find, maybe a misunderstanding, that's wheeled out by some committees or strata managers. It's a matter of Australian privacy law. Well, it's not. The Australian privacy law does not apply to prevent an owner's corporation from providing this information, and the tribunal said that in this Legg case. So why might you be wanting to get email addresses of owners? Well, if you're an owner doing perhaps a major renovation and you have a bylaw that's coming up for a meeting and you think it's going to be a little bit controversial, you might want to get in touch with some other owners or all the other owners, particularly if they're investor owners, they're not residents, you can't go knocking on their door, and you want to tell them a little bit about your proposal, what it is you're doing, give them some of the finer detail that might not otherwise be on the agenda, and give them the opportunity to ask you any questions direct. Give them your details. Shoot me an email if you've got any questions, that kind of thing. That's something I often recommend to my clients who are trying to get significant proposals across the line. Let's send an email out to the owners and start that discussion. So that might be a reason why you might want to get hold of that information. And as our law currently stands, you are entitled to that information. So my recent experience was that I needed to send a letter to a strata manager drawing their attention to section 178 because they had previously told me that they didn't need to include the email addresses on the strata roll and certainly not provide them to me. And once I drew their attention to section 178, I think they did pop off and get some legal advice on that, which was a good idea, and they came back and they did provide that strata roll with the email addresses. So my client's able to proceed with their plans in relation to that information. So I hope that's a helpful tip for you today. It comes up so often. I'm pretty sure Rena and I have spoken about it on the podcast, and it's good information to have up your sleeve if you are facing a committee or a strata manager who is refusing your access to that information. So check out those sections. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. Love to hear from them. Thanks so much, guys.